Okay, we are recording. So welcome everyone to this live workshop where we're going to be talking about sourcing in Vietnam. And I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Meghlab Bharadwaj. I'm the co-founder of India Sourcing Network and Vietnam Sourcing Trip and India Sourcing Trip. And I've got with me my co-founders, Margaret Jolly and Kevin Aldim. So the three of us are co-founders of India Sourcing Network, Vietnam Sourcing Trip, and India Sourcing Trip. And we've also got a very special guest today, Linn Sundin, who is a seven-figure seller. She's been sourcing in Vietnam for quite a few years. She's also an invited expert on our Vietnam sourcing trip, and she's here to share her experience sourcing in Vietnam. So the agenda for today is basically going to be, we're going to be sharing some slides. We're going to be talking about how to source in Vietnam and giving you a lot of information to get started. And then we're going to have a Q&A. So overall, we have scheduled about 1.5 hours for this workshop because we want to make sure that we address everyone's questions. We've had over 200 attendees who have registered, and we've got tons and tons of questions for the webinar. So we want to make sure that everybody's questions are addressed. But if you need to leave, that's not a problem because we are recording and the replay will be sent to you right after the workshop finishes. So if you do need to leave, that's not a problem. All right. And so while we are presenting, if you do have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and then we will address the questions later on. All right, so I'm going to share screen and we're going to get right into this. Is anybody here already sourcing in Vietnam? Can you type yes in the comments if you are already sourcing in Vietnam? Nobody. Except for Linn. Nobody else sourcing in Vietnam already. Okay, cool. That's awesome. So you're going to find this information very, very interesting. So just a quick background on myself before I begin. So I've been in the Asian sourcing industry for over 20 years. I worked in China for 10 years, Singapore, Philippines, and now currently based in India. And we have sourcing teams in India and Vietnam. We help people source products from India and Vietnam, and also Thailand. Now we're exploring Thailand. It's a very interesting market. And also, China. So we are really entrenched in this sourcing from Asia business. And so we see things from very up close, what's really happening on the ground. And therefore, we are in a great position to share this information with you so that, you can hopefully get started sourcing from Vietnam as well. All right, so here are the topics that we're going to be covering today. We're going to move fast because there's a lot of information over here because we want to spend a lot of time with Q&A. So first of all, we'll talk about why you should consider sourcing from Vietnam, what are the product categories you can source, comparing Vietnam versus China, some of the production hubs, how to find suppliers, how to manage quality, how to manage shipping and logistics, and also we'll talk about our Vietnam sourcing trip that is coming up in April. And guys, if anyone's interested in joining us for this trip, you've got to stick around until the end, or you can watch the recording if you have to leave. But we're going to be offering a special discount for the Vietnam sourcing trip on this webinar. And then we'll also have a Q&A with Linn towards the end and address everybody's questions otherwise too. All right, let's get started. So first of all, why you should consider sourcing from Vietnam. So here's just like a bird's eye view of the overall exports of Vietnam, year on year. And this is until 2022. But as you can see, right from 2011 to 2022, exports have been increasing consistently. So from $96 billion in 2011, it's up to $371.5 billion in 2022. And even higher in 2023. So overall, the country's exports have consistently been increasing. Here's a view of the countries that Vietnam really exports to. And as you can see, United States is the biggest trading partner of Vietnam. 29% of exports from Vietnam go to United States, 17% to China, South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Netherlands, Germany. So combined, Europe is also a big export market, but the United States is a big export market for Vietnam. And, most of the Amazon e-commerce sellers that are in our community are selling on Amazon.com in the US. So Vietnam is a really good fit because exporters and manufacturers are already familiar with the export requirements of the United States. In terms of product categories, now we're going to cover product categories specifically for Amazon e-commerce sellers in subsequent slides, but this is just, official data. Of course, we're not going to be sourcing nuclear reactors and boilers unless you want to, but this is just to give you an idea of the overall export. So electrical machinery is the number one export category. Footwear, that's massive. As you know, there are a lot of big companies like Nike, Adidas, etc., that have set up factories in Vietnam. Clothing accessories not knitted, this is a big category. Nuclear reactors, furniture, bedding, fish. There's a lot of food items coming out from Vietnam as well. Edible fruit and nuts, optical, photographic, and plastics. All right. One of the biggest reasons to consider sourcing from Vietnam is the low labor costs. And, in China, overall production costs have been increasing over the last couple of years. And this is also one of the reasons why a lot of companies that are producing low-end products that are more manual and require more labor have been shifting out of China to lower cost countries such as Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, for example, garments or bags that require that are very manual and labor intensive. It makes more sense nowadays to produce these products in low labor cost countries. And China is actually moving up the value chain. And this is by design. The Chinese government does want Chinese manufacturers to produce more valuable products. So suppliers in China are moving up the value chain, whereas all of the low-end kind of production is moving out to other countries. So this is a trend that has been happening for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. It's not something new, but it has been really accelerating over the last couple of years, especially as alternative markets such as Vietnam and India really start picking up and more and more buyers start looking to these countries. So if you do have a labor intensive product, then Vietnam is a great option. All right, there's also a large, well-educated labor force, even though the population of Vietnam is minuscule compared to China, but 57% of the 98 million population is in the labor force. 95% of the labor force is literate, and they're very efficient. And also Vietnam's labor force is 7 years younger than the labor force in China. The government has also been emphasizing vocational and technical training, and they have really been emphasizing the manufacturing sector and helping improve the manufacturing sector overall. Free trade agreements. Now, this is a big advantage as well. So Vietnam is a signatory to 18 active and planned bilateral and multilateral free trade agreements. So if you are importing to, Europe or UK or US, and India, in fact, as well, and many, many other countries, there are a lot of free trade agreements, which means that there are no import duties or very minimal import duties on many product categories. So this is a huge advantage when you're sourcing from Vietnam. All right. Then, Vietnam has fewer restrictions on foreign direct investment. And of course, a lot of the companies, manufacturers in Vietnam are Chinese owned. So there are a lot of Chinese companies that are investing factories in Vietnam because they want to diversify their manufacturing, portfolios. And they're also trying to avoid the Trump tariffs that are applied on products that are imported from China into the US. So therefore, they have been setting up factories in Vietnam. So there's a lot of Chinese manufacturing, but at the same time, there are a lot of local Vietnamese manufacturers that are setting up factories. And what's happening is that there's technology transfer from these Chinese companies that are setting up factories, to the local manufacturers. And as much as possible, we try to work with locally owned factories. But of course, there's a lot of good factories that are Chinese owned as well. Okay, so in terms of the government incentives, they have removed restrictions on foreign ownership of manufacturing facilities for several industries. In 2022, the overall FDI was $25 billion. and they have issued several tax holidays and tax incentives for manufacturing projects. There's lots of high-tech zones, industrial zones that are aimed at improving and increasing manufacturing setups and also exports. And there are certain industries that the government is prioritizing, such as textiles, garments, IT, automobiles, assembly, etc. Okay, so let's talk about Vietnam versus China now. Now, first of all, as I mentioned, low labor costs, that's a big advantage, whereas in China, production costs have been increasing. FTAs with many countries, whereas China does not have many FTAs. Vietnam has good relations with US and Europe, whereas there's some geopolitical tensions with US and Europe, with China. No US trade tariffs, whereas China in certain categories has high trade tariffs. Market share of certain categories has been increasing from Vietnam. And I think I have charts for some of these categories, but it's very interesting to see how Vietnam, such a tiny country, is actually the #1 exporter of furniture, or like #2 exporter of furniture in the world, compared to China. And for China, certain categories, their overall market share of global exports has actually been decreasing. One of the cons of sourcing in Vietnam or any other China alternative is the limited product range, whereas China can manufacture anything and everything. Many other countries are limited in terms of the product categories that they can produce. So this is always going to be sort of a limitation. And, moving forward, there is not going to be another China. A lot of people ask me, hey, is there another China? Where do we go to source if China is not competitive anymore? There will not be another China. Moving forward, global sourcing is going to be fragmented. There are going to be a lot of different production hubs that will come up, and each production hub will have its own unique selling points, its own pros and cons, and sourcing will be more diversified. So this is already happening. I mean, the global sourcing world has been changing over the last few years, and this change is going to continue to happen. In Vietnam, the infrastructure is pretty good, but of course, China's infrastructure is amazing. I lived there for 10 years. It was amazing at that time, and now it's even better. So China has, of course, invested a lot in infrastructure. Most materials and components need to be imported. This is also changing gradually, but currently, if you do need any, like high-tech materials or components, or maybe, specific types of fabrics, those do need to be imported, mostly from China or other countries. Whereas in China, of course, most materials and components are available locally. Okay, let's talk about the product categories that can be imported from Vietnam. And we have like almost 250 or more registrants for this webinar, and we've got so many questions, hundreds of questions, and a lot of people were asking what are the types of products that we can source in Vietnam. So the next subsequent slides will be covering this. Have some coffee because it's very early in the morning here. Okay, so one of the biggest product categories from Vietnam is wooden furniture. And overall, as you can see, exports in 2022 were $16.5 billion. So I won't go through all of these numbers because we will also be sharing these slides with you. But overall, Vietnam has 17% of global market share, and 70 to 80% of the materials are imported. And Vietnam is #1 or #2 exporter in the world. And China is #1 or #2. They sort of switch places every year. Main export markets are US, UK, Japan, China, Japan, and South Korea. There's a huge variety of furniture available, and we visited lots of different factories when we were there, last year. But there's all types of different woods available, such as acacia wood, beech wood, and you'll find everything from wooden furniture to upholstered furniture to office furniture, beds, sofas, huge wide range. Also, you'll find a lot of knockdown furniture. I mean, of course, for e-commerce, you won't really be shipping sofas to Amazon FBA, but there's also smaller, like children's furniture, or maybe knockdown or flat pack furniture that can be considered. This is also a very huge category, and a lot of Amazon e-commerce sellers are actually finding success in these types of bamboo, rattan, water hyacinth, seagrass kind of products. And again, we visited lots of factories last year, and the product quality is absolutely amazing. A lot of these products are, of course, handmade. So this is, a specialty that Vietnam has, and there are artisans that really specialize in this, in making such products. So there's baskets, there's furniture, storage containers, handicrafts, toys, wall hangings, chairs, ottomans, cat houses, and dog baskets, like really cute cat houses that we saw last year when we were at the Global Sourcing Trade Show. There's also trays, handbags, furniture, planters, laundry baskets, like a huge variety of products. Here are some examples. This is so cute, this little cat house over here. What we've also seen is that the finishing of these products is really good. Sometimes what happens is with these seagrass and other types of handmade products, the finishing maybe is not very good, but we found that the overall structure, the finishing was quite good because the artisans are very skilled, and also the materials that are available are consistent and high quality. So that really makes a big difference. In terms of home decor, there are lots of products. So this is mother of pearl inlay. This is something that, again, Vietnam really specializes in. Really beautiful products that use mother of pearl inlay. There's lacquerware, in case anyone's interested. So a lot of beautiful products, home decor. And again, suppliers are very open to OEM. So if you come up with your own design, or if you want to modify their designs, they're very open to that as well. This is just something very unique, coconut, because they do have a lot of natural materials over there, so they do use those natural materials. Ceramic and bone china. So again, very high quality ceramic items available, porcelain, and there are specific cities that really specialize in ceramics. And we had actually visited this little village that specializes in ceramics production, and it was absolutely beautiful. Also marble. I don't think we mentioned marble over here, but marble is a very good category from Vietnam, and there are lots of very unique kind of products, from very small, intricately designed home decor items to large statues that can be placed outside of hotels or maybe as garden ornaments. So marble is another category. Okay, clothing and textiles. This is a huge, massive market. And what's been happening is a lot of the big brands have been moving out of China because of high production costs, and they have been moving to countries such as Vietnam. So $45 billion worth of exports in 2022, 20 to 26% annual growth rate, third largest textile exporter in the world. Key markets are US, South Korea, Japan, Europe. And suppliers are increasingly focusing on eco-friendly products. In terms of the types of apparel, we've got sportswear, t-shirts, socks, casual wear, uniforms, outerwear. So a lot of different varieties of garments. Footwear, this is again a big category. And currently, most of the footwear is being exported by the top brands like Nike, Adidas, who have set up their own factories in Vietnam. But increasingly, there are also a lot of smaller OEM factories that have come up and that produce footwear. In fact, if you join us on our Vietnam sourcing trip, we go to this little market where you can actually get leather footwear custom made, and they just make it in a few hours. It was so neat. You can just choose a design from what they have on display and then give your measurements to them, and then it's just come back after a few hours and you have your leather shoes ready, or sandals. It was very cool. So in terms of types of footwear, we've got flip-flops, sandals, luxury leather shoes, sneakers, and boots. So lots of different types of footwear available. Bags, backpacks. Now this is very cool. Vietnam is one of the largest manufacturers of bags and accessories, and a lot of the products are specialty backpacks. In fact, one of our invited experts on the trip is Ben Leonard, who is a 7-figure seller. He's exited his brand and he's sourcing products from Vietnam. And he is going to be taking us to his factory that he uses to manufacture his backpacks. I mean, this is amazing. Usually e-commerce experts don't even disclose their products, but here's Ben, who's actually not only disclosing his product, but he's actually taking us to the factory where he's sourcing from. So that's going to be pretty amazing. So manufacturing overall reached $4 billion in 2022. And there are a lot of big brands that are sourcing in Vietnam: North Face, Patagonia, Kipling. Those are some of the companies that produce bags there. Vietnam has thousands of artisans and a workforce for custom bag projects, and large factories are also available to scale up to millions of bags per month. So you'll find smaller factories that can do small orders. If you're just starting out, it doesn't make sense to go to a really large factory because their MOQs would be higher. But if you are, scaling, and if you want to source in containers, then there are factories available that can do that as well. Just some of the different types of bags that are available, polyester, specialty fabrics, also luggage, not only bags and backpacks, but also luggage, suitcases is a big category. Packaging, so $1.7 billion annual exports of packaging, types of packaging available, cardboard boxes, soda cans, plastic packaging, for food and beverages, and there's for cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, bottling, barcode printing, labeling. And when we were at the Global Sourcing Fair last year, we saw very interesting different packaging options. Like you see this bottle over here. This is such a beautiful gift box. And I know Marg was totally in love with this, and she kept going back to the booth to see the packaging and taking photos and taking videos, but lots of different options available. Okay, plastics. Now, generally, China is considered a really good source of, plastic and silicone kind of products that are high volume and low value. But Vietnam is coming up as a great alternative. $5 billion worth of annual exports of rubber and plastic goods. Most consumer goods items are rubber dog toys, home products, sunglasses. We did visit a couple of factories last year. One was making, all types of plastic items, huge factory, totally automated. And then we had also visited one factory that did silicone products and also acrylic. So that was another category. Most common method is plastic injection, but you can also find plastic extrusion in welding. Rubber manufacturers offer extrusion, latex dipping, molding, and calidrang. And Vietnam is a great option if you're sourcing a product of components made of rubber or plastic. So one thing to note is for rubber and plastic and these kinds of items, the MOQs can be higher. So if you're just wanting to source maybe 200 or 500 pieces, it might not work. This is more for, if you want to scale. I mean, certain products you might be able to do small MOQs, but if you're doing like plastic containers for the kitchen, for example, they will, and especially if it's your own design, then the MOQs will be higher. All right, so electronics, and this is something that I've just added in over here. Now, most of the exports in electronics are, of course, big companies, MNCs that have set up their factories in Vietnam to export. So there's Foxconn, LG, Samsung, Intel, everybody has their factories there. However, what's also happening is that there are Chinese companies that are setting up factories for, consumer electronics like headphones and power banks, etc. And gradually, there are going to be more local manufacturers that come up, that set up factories, because there's going to be technology transfer. In fact, when we were at the Global Sourcing Trade Show, we already saw that trend. We heard people talking about, there are consumer electronics factories being set up. But currently, mostly the electronics exports is just these big companies. So if you still want power banks or headphones or other consumer electronics, China is really the country to go to. More products, there's construction items, coffee, seafood, hotel and restaurant, porcelain, and marble items as well. All right, so I'm going to pass things over to Marg now, and she's going to be covering the rest of the slides, and then we'll go into Q&A. So Marg, over to you. I'm going to mute myself.
Great, thanks, Megla. Okay, the production centres in Vietnam are actually quite spread out from the north to the south. So about a third of the manufacturing and the retail activity that like people watching would be sort of sourcing from, the areas are concentrated around Ho Chi Minh in Binh Dong and Dong Noi provinces, which are within a couple of hours drive of Ho Chi Minh. Now, many products are produced in the south. So that's where a lot of I think most of the products that you would be looking for, except for ceramics and the woven products, come from the south. So ceramics are found in the north, and there's a village called Bat Trang Village, which Megla was speaking about before, which is just amazing how many products and streets there are just full of amazing types of ceramic products. Now, wood, bamboo, rattan, the cane, tea, coffee, spices can also be found in the north, and the bamboo and rattan is also down around Da Nang. Lacquerware, that can be found in both Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh. Leather and athletic shoes, they're mainly located around Ho Chi Minh, and clothing is mainly manufactured in the centre and the south. Now, all throughout Vietnam as well, there's obviously a lot of production of spices, and the seafood comes from different ports as well. So as well as what the products we're actually looking for, Vietnam has a huge range of other products that come from all over the this sort of whole of the sort of area. Next slide, please, Megla. Okay, now this is just a map, so you get the idea. So on the left here we have, that's where Hanoi is, which is Hai Phong Port. It's a mouthful. And so 22% of Vietnam's GDP comes from that area. Then down around Da Nang here in the middle, which is the central economic zone, there's 5% of the GDP. And then as you see, Vietnam at the bottom, 37.75 around Ho Chi Minh City, and within 2 or 3 hours of that, there are some other little sort of areas all the way along the coast, but these are the main sort of production hubs. Next slide, please. Now, how to find suppliers. Okay, it's not an easy thing like China to find a supplier. So like many of the local and foreign sourcing agents are in Vietnam, and that's probably one way, is to use someone to help you find the products. Now, some of these sourcing agents charge a flat fee, some charge a percentage of the order value. Now, we can actually help you do this. We actually offer a done-for-you service where we can help you find products and QC them and manage the whole process. So if you're interested in that, you can email us. Next slide, please, Megan. Now, trade shows. We actually attend the Global Sources Trade Fair in Ho Chi Minh, which is like focused on home, fashion, and it's all external international exports. So that's a good fair to go to, where you get to see a big variety of what's available. There are also other fairs. There are a lot of fairs in Vietnam. These are just a few. There's an international home, furniture and accessories fair. There's the International Textile and Apparel and Accessories exhibition, and there's a processing and packaging exhibition, and there are lots of different ones for the seafoods and spices and all that. If you Google all those, if you're interested in going to a particular trade show. Next slide, please, Miguel. There's some associations as well that you can look up to get some information. So there's the Vietnam Textile and Apparel Association, the Rubber Association, footwear and leather handbags, and the electronic industry. So finding suppliers can be quite difficult. I mean, you can go, Global Sources has an online service where you can look up, if you put in the country filter Vietnam. Same with Alibaba. Something you'll have to be very careful with Alibaba is though, because you're going to be, even though you filter for Vietnam, you'll probably find a lot of those people are Chinese manufacturers, and it's going to be quite difficult to actually find someone if you want to deal with a Vietnam factory, not a Chinese factory that's just moved their production over to Vietnam. So next slide, please. Now, quality control, that's something that's highly important, and the things you should look out for, number one is ensure that the supplier you choose is export focused. It's no point getting your product made with a local manufacturer who, number one, probably does inferior quality, and number two, does not have the license to get the goods out of the country. Now, you can also, if you're unsure with a factory, you can get a factory audit done by a quality control company. Now, quality checks are a must. So even, especially if it's your first run, you should always at least have a final inspection. And you can also, I think, make up a list before you actually get your product made of all the instructions, of all the things that can go wrong that you think of, and all the things you want somebody to check. So, are the joints right if it's wood, all those types of things, so the quality control person knows. And if you're actually doing a product where you found other people have written a review saying this is an issue and you've tried to fix that issue, so you want that those things be checked as well. So you've got to be very careful that you get everything checked, and things like your barcode, your packaging, all those things need checking. Now, if you're doing a larger order or a new order, we suggest you do a midline inspection as well, so halfway through production, to make sure. It's no good getting to the end and finding there was a problem with something at the start. And look, if you're using something with materials like wood or a cloth product, I would suggest that before production is commenced, that you get that product checked to make sure that the material is what you want and how it should be, because you don't want to, make sort of some garments and find out that, the dye is wrong, there's something wrong with it, and get to the very end. Now, costing of a quality check, it depends on the location, how far the factory is from where the sort of quality control company is, but it's usually around 200 USD per man day. So that's just an average. So you would need to get a quote and ask, and it depends on the complexity and how much you want checked. If you want 100% inspection, it's going to be quite costly, but you might choose to just do 10% or 20%. And sometimes you will find that the quality control companies can guide you because they know what to look for and what you should be checking, and they might say, oh, with this product we don't usually have issues, maybe just do 5 or 10%, you don't need to do 100. But I do know people who have done 100% recently of products, so it's something you can consider. Next slide, please. Logistics. Okay, so now the major seaports in Vietnam is Hai Phong, which is up at Hanoi. Now it does 199 million tonne a year, and then Da Nang does 90 million tonne, and Ho Chi Minh, as we can see, a lot of these shipments go out of there, so there's 298 million tonne. Now there are a few other ports scattered around, which would have more of the agriculture and some of the food and things leaving from those ports as well. Next slide, please, Megla. Now, the average shipping time. So from Hai Phong port in North Vietnam to the west coast of the US, it takes around 30 to 35 days. To the east coast, it's 33 to 35 days. So there's not much difference there. Now, just something that we know from shipping with products from India to the US is the cost of the ports. When you go into the East Coast, you'll find that the port fees are a lot cheaper than going into California. And if you are sending things in, particularly around now when it's Chinese New Year or Christmas, when most of the volume of products going to the US are coming from China, you will find that the ports are really congested in California, and they're a lot more expensive. So if you go into the East Coast, you can avoid that. And the other bonus is warehousing can be a lot cheaper on the East Coast. California, you can be paying up to $45 a pallet a month storage. We actually use a third-party logistic warehouse in the East Coast down in Jacksonville, and they charge, I think it's $21 or something like that a pallet. So it's half price, and they charge by the hour for their labour, not by a component like the West Coast. So that's just a little tip if you're starting to look at how you're going to do that. You can also ship to Europe, and that's 30 to 32 days. Now, air shipping is like 4 to 6 days, and express air shipping is 2 to 4 days. So that's, I think, the last slide, Megla.
All right, thank you very much for that, Mark. So what we're going to do is quickly talk about Vietnam sourcing trip, and then we're going to go straight into Q&A. So we host this Vietnam sourcing trip once a year. The next one is coming up in April. This is a 10-day immersive tour to basically discover all of the different products that Vietnam has to offer. You can learn all about sourcing in Vietnam, visit factories, make connections. We introduce you to all of our service providers. You can also attend a trade show and experience the culture as we travel from the north to the south of the country. And for those of you who have attended our India sourcing trip, I see some familiar names in Zoom over here. So if you've experienced our India sourcing trip, our Vietnam sourcing trip is very similar. It's different in some ways that we mostly focus on visiting factories. In India, we don't visit too many factories because our focus is more on the trade show. But in Vietnam, the trade show that we visit is actually much smaller. So we spend only 1 day at the trade show, and we're mostly traveling and visiting different factories. So overall, what are the benefits of attending? One, you can visit pre-qualified factories. You can tell us what specific products you're looking for, and we can also arrange factory tours for you to go visit those factories separately. But otherwise, in terms of the product categories that we cover during our factory visits, these are the main product categories that e-commerce Amazon sellers would have interest in. For example, we visit, Ben's backpack factory. We visit some rattan factories that make, different types of home product items from rattan, seagrass, etc. Wooden products, marble and plastic injection, silicone, and ceramics. Basically, but we're very flexible. If a lot of people who join the trip, they want to source a particular kind of product, we have a team in Vietnam. We can go find factories and vet them and take you there. And we can even arrange exclusive tours for you to visit factories, on your own. Let's say you want a specific product that maybe none of the other people in the group are interested in. So we can arrange separate individual factory tours for you as well. And this is a big part of the trip. In any trip that we organize, we introduce you to all of our exclusive, vetted, and trusted service providers, whether it's, a freight forwarder or quality control company, lawyers. So any type of service provider that you will need to source products from Vietnam. And this is an issue that we found a lot of people face when they start sourcing in a new country, because, hey, how do I find a freight forwarder? And how do I know that the freight forwarder will actually deliver my products on time? And do I have a good price? So we've got this list of vetted and trusted service providers that we share with you. We attend a trade show. So as we mentioned, global sourcing trade show. The biggest advantage of this trade show, as Mark mentioned earlier, is that it's an export-focused trade show. So all the suppliers there are ready to export. There are lots of home, gift, and fashion products. It's not a very big trade show, about 350 to 400 suppliers, exhibitors, most of them manufacturers. I don't think there were too many trading companies when we went there last time, but really good quality suppliers. You can also join mastermind sessions with sourcing and ecom experts. So we'll have our sourcing experts there, and then Lynn will be joining us. Ben Leonard will be joining us. Plus, we'll have a couple of other experts, ecom experts, and we basically in the evenings we get together and do mastermind sessions to share ideas and learn from each other. And if you've been on any sourcing trip, you know that one of the biggest benefits is actually networking. You learn more during networking than you do in conferences or at factory tours. You never know who you're sitting with and when a light bulb moment might just happen. You can also engage with brands who are already buying from Vietnam. So like Lynn's brand and Ben, they're already sourcing there. They have a lot of experience that they can share with you. You can understand the pitfalls to avoid and cultural differences. Enjoy Vietnam's scenic beauty as we visit the famous Ha Long Bay and other tourist spots. And this is one of my favorite parts of the trip now. So Ha Long Bay is like a really beautiful, picturesque, scenic place. And we spend a night there on a boat. It's called a junk boat, but it's in no way a junk boat. I don't know why it's known as a junk boat, but it's a really beautiful boat. And we spend the night there, and it's just beautiful, so peaceful, so serene. I can't wait to get back on the boat. And of course, the food. And if you talk to Mark, she will say that her favorite food is rice paper rolls, and she can basically survive on rice paper rolls for the whole trip. But Vietnam has a lot of delicious food to offer. So again, we make sure that you can savor all of the different types of foods. So this is what our itinerary looks like. And we do travel to 3 different cities. So we start in the north in Hanoi. April 17th is arrival day. We do a conference on April 18th. And then we visit some factories in Hanoi. There's networking dinner and drinks. There's information sessions. And then we go to the boat in Ha Long Bay on the 19th. On the 20th, we fly to Da Nang. We do some factory visits in the morning on the 20th. Then in the evening, we fly to Da Nang. We do some factory visits there, information sessions or mastermind sessions. Then on the 21st, we attend a local market. We visit a local market, Hoi An, and this is where you can actually get your clothes made or get your customized leather flip-flops made. This is a very cool market, or sunglasses even. In fact, I got these glasses from there, my reading glasses. And then we also have networking, drinks, and dinner. Now, Hoi An is a very beautiful it's almost like a shopping area. And the thing with Hoi An is that there are lots of little shops over there producing lots of different types of products. Now, these shops are not really manufacturers, but it actually gives you an idea of what types of products Vietnam can make, and it might, give you ideas of what you can produce in Vietnam. So there's a lot of leather items, garments, textiles, shoes, accessories. So it just gives you an idea of what are the different types of products that Vietnam can manufacture. Then on the 22nd, we fly to Ho Chi Minh City. We do some factory visits over there on the 23rd and the 24th. We visit some of the markets, and then we attend Global Sources trade show. We have information sessions, and then we end the trip with a Saigon River dinner cruise, which is again beautiful. It's a massive ship basically that we're on, and it's cruising down the Saigon River while we're enjoying wine and delicious food. Mark, do you want to add anything over here about the itinerary?
Well, yes, I just think I don't know what my favourite spot is anymore. I love going to Hoi An because there's so much. Well, there's a lot of inspiration because the things you can see that they actually can make that we might not have seen in some of the factory visits, but then you can go away and find the factories because these things are being made somewhere. They're not all made at Hoi An. Some of them are stores that just sell a lot of the local products like backpacks and things like that. So, and there are a lot of ideas there, but I still think Halong Bay is my favourite. But even just going to the factories and seeing all the different factories as we travel through, and the diverseness of going from north to south. It's very, very busy in Ho Chi Minh compared to Hanoi and Da Nang. So, and crossing the road's fun. I think everyone's got to come to Vietnam just to experience crossing the road.
Yeah, just don't look and just keep walking.
Walk in front of everyone and you'll be right.
Yeah. And Lynn has visited Vietnam many, many times, and she was on our previous trip as well. So Lynn, what is your favorite part of the trip?
I love Hanoi.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do think it's an amazing city. I do. So it's definitely my favorite place in the whole of Vietnam. Halong Bay, beautiful as well, but I definitely love Hanoi. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It's got this charm about it, right? It's a perfect balance of modern and traditional. So yeah, very beautiful. Cool. All right, so we've got some of the experts that are joining us. Linn Sundin, as I said, Ben Leonard. We've got RSJ Inspection. We've got Samiksha from Sierra. Now, Samiksha is our logistics partner for India, and they also do logistics in Vietnam. So they're going to be joining us. And we've got Kylie Armstrong, who's an e-commerce coach, and more experts are going to be announced soon. All right, so this is a special launch offer that we have, and if anyone's interested in this Vietnam sourcing trip, please take a screenshot of this or a photo of this code because this is a special launch offer that we have for the trip, and it's only valid until Jan 31st. So if you are considering joining us, or if you'd like to consider joining us, then you can use the code LAUNCH for $500 off of the trip, but this is only valid for 1 week. The price or the cost of the trip is mentioned over here, and this is paid in 3 monthly installments. And the way that the trip works is the cost that you pay covers everything from the time you step out of the airport. So all you need to cover is your airfare and your visa fees, and the visa fees is minimal, and the application process is online, so it doesn't take a lot of time to get the visa. So as soon as you step out of the airport, everything is covered for you, including the hotel, transportation, domestic flights, all the food, factory visits, transportation, all of the sightseeing that we do, the Halong Bay River cruise, like everything is included in the price that you pay. So all you need to do is arrive at Hanoi Airport, and from there on, everything is covered for you. So I think it's a really, really good deal considering that you're traveling to 3 different cities. You're visiting like almost 8 to 10 factories. You're going to be on a boat, overnight on a boat, and the river cruise. And of course, all of the learnings that you can actually, the learnings that the information that you can get talking and networking to other attendees, and also all of the e-commerce and sourcing experts. So this is a great way to discover the different types of products Vietnam has to offer, and to basically kickstart your sourcing, because you're getting all of the information. You're getting the logistics service providers, the quality control, all of the service providers, you're seeing the factories, so you're getting all of the, suppliers. You're visiting a trade show where you can, again, see lots of different products. And of course, you're getting all of the information. So it's a nice, tight package that we have created for all of you to kickstart your Vietnam sourcing journey. So please do take a screenshot of this, or just remember the code launch for $500 off. And when you do use the code, you don't have to pay the full amount. Currently, it's just one installment that you're paying. So you're sort of just, booking your space, and then you're paying in 3 monthly installments. So it's not like you have to pay everything up front. There are 2 options available, just to clarify over here. So if you want to share a room with another attendee, or maybe bring a business partner, you can save $500. If you don't have a business partner, we can actually pair you with another attendee if you don't mind, sharing a room with another attendee. But that's just another way to save a bit of money. But if you do want a single room in all of the different hotels that we stay in, then the cost is $5,500. This excludes the boat in Ha Long Bay, where we might have to share rooms with other attendees. But in all of the other hotels that we stay in, it will be a single room. All right, so that was it for our presentation, and I am now going to stop sharing my screen, and we are ready for Q&A. So before we start Q&A, I just want to ask Lynn to introduce herself and tell us, Lynn, about your experience and how did you end up sourcing in Vietnam?
Okay, so I started sourcing in Vietnam 2020. I actually found my suppliers on Alibaba, and my supplier that I use, I have a lot of different factories in Vietnam, but my supplier is actually a trading company. And the reason for this is that Vietnam is not that advanced. So sometimes it can be a bit difficult. And the only way I can communicate is actually using my trading company, because my factories would not have the skills to speak English and talk directly to me. So I started sourcing in 2020 and just put a product up. And since then, it's just kind of, it worked. And I think what I've done is that I've tried to maximize how I'm thinking is I'm just trying to maximize the factories that I'm using, and just trying to do as many products out of these factories as possible, if that makes sense. Yeah,
absolutely. So guys, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. And we've also got a lot of other questions from people who registered, so we're going to be covering those as well. Hopefully a lot of questions have already been answered, in the slides that we covered. But let's see. So Gary has this question: does Vietnam produce alabaster?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Okay.
Marble, travertine, and alabaster. You can get it all from Vietnam.
Cool. My experience is that India produces high quality products, but the packaging is somewhat inferior, while China products good, not great products, but the packaging is very good. How is it in Vietnam? So, India does produce good packaging as well. You've got to make sure that you're giving the right specifications to the supplier. But I think packaging is one of Vietnam's specialties, as we saw in some of the slides. So yeah, you can get really good packaging in Vietnam for sure. Mark, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and look, I think the quality of the products in Vietnam is very good. Look, everything that we sort of seen either in the factories or when we're at the fair were really high quality products, and amazingly how clean some of the factories. Like we went to a factory that was a wooden factory, and the floor was just so clean. Like it was amazing how something that's producing lots and lots of wooden, shavings and things, but the whole factory was very clean. So I think all in all, you'd be very surprised. But there's different factories too. Like you've got your tier 1 factories, which none of us would probably get a leg in the door, because that'll be the ones that are doing all the big only by the container. And that's one thing you've got to be very careful when you're going to, on your own, approach suppliers. You probably won't get a reply from a very big percentage of them, because if you just say, I want to, source 500 or 1,000 pieces, they're not going to be interested, because we do find that a lot of the suppliers there are more focused on containers and big production. So you've got to sift through and find the supplier to fit your needs. So I think, you know, a tier 2 factory, but the ones we visited, because obviously we haven't been to the really big factories either, because it's number one, it's no point, and number two, they probably don't want us wandering through. But I think you will find that I just like I suppose, the people from Vietnam. I find them very trusting. And well, then you can probably speak on this. How do you find dealing with the Vietnamese?
I think it's been pretty good actually, because they are very, like, they're behind China. They haven't been very sophisticated, but I can feel just in the last, I mean, obviously as well, that when they feel that they have a really good customer in front of them, they're putting in a lot of work to become better and change things themselves. They, like, when we started, they might have just not had the skills, but when they have someone good in front of them, they're definitely doing whatever they can to become better as well.
Actually, and just something we didn't mention on the trip, we actually have Vietnamese speaking guides as well as sourcing agents. So you won't have any issues anywhere we go, you know, with communication. And I think that is probably something, once again, if you're dealing with it on your own, you might find it's a little bit like China, that you're only speaking to the person at the front who speaks like Vietnamese. So sometimes it's good to have a local sourcing agent working for you who can go in and help. And I know you've got someone working for you full time, haven't you, Linn, who obviously speaks Vietnamese.
Yeah, but that's not for that reason. I have someone working for me, just that's doing my QC, because it's very high volumes when she goes in and works. But yeah, I mean, I think all the factories that we are communicating with, they will have the skills. I mean, the factories I met when I went last year with you, they were all very skilled in terms of English. So it definitely depends. But we also did meet some trading companies with you as well, when obviously they have lots of factories under them, and they do the communication because it's just not possible otherwise.
All right, so Phil B has asked a question. What are the common payment terms and any pitfalls? So generally when we pay suppliers, we like to do like a 30-70. You know, this is also when it's the first order of the buyer with the supplier. But once we place repeat orders, then suppliers are more flexible, and you can also get, you know, terms with the suppliers. In terms of you know, how to pay suppliers, so there's generally bank transfer, that's the best way, or, you know, air wallets. We always recommend air wallets. So that's how we do our payments to suppliers. And Linn, how about you? What are the payment terms that you generally have?
I use air wallets, first of all, and I think it's amazing. Yes. Secondly, when I started off on the terms that you just mentioned. When I visited Vietnam the first time, and you face-to-face, those terms has changed. And now, because we have a relationship and we've been in business for so long, they actually don't even if I have a pay date, my suppliers don't even actually ask me anymore to pay when my bills are due. They literally just leave it till end of the month and just say, look, oh wow, we just noticed that you have like a few containers that, you know, are up to this and that, and you have to pay for it. So and I think also, just to kick off in a relationship with being face to face, like going on one of the sourcing trips actually changed that instantly, that you made an effort to turn up. So if you have been face to face with someone and you are placing an order, I think you can just get better terms quicker, if that makes sense. So they are very, very flexible, and as long as they can see that you're growing, they want to do whatever they can to help you to do that, so you can place your orders.
And this is something I really like about, you know, sourcing in Vietnam and India and Thailand as well, that they're so flexible and they're very accommodating. Whereas I think in China, I mean, of course, it's more, they're producing and exporting on a larger scale. They've got a lot more buyers, but they're more, transactional, like, okay, give me my money and then take your product, So I think it's just easier to build a more personal relationship in countries like India and Vietnam. All right,
Yeah.
so payments. Yes, we will be sending out a replay. So in case anybody has to leave, that's not a problem. To clarify payment terms to pay manufacturers, not for the sourcing trip. Yes, Phil, okay. Okay, Andrew, apologies for joining the presentation late. Maybe this was discussed. My product is a small, high quality timber furniture piece. Think Scandinavian design. Is Vietnam a good option for this type of product? Yes, absolutely. It is. Any type of furniture, Vietnam is really good for it. Andrew, what type of wood are you looking for? Is there anything specific? And you can unmute and talk.
Thanks, Megla. And yeah, sorry, I had a Zoom call that went over time before, so that's why I was late. It's I'm thinking something like an acacia wood, or maybe even like an ash.
Yeah.
I have been. I've looked at the mango woods and things like that, but it's big. When you think about Scandinavian design, it's generally an ash or not so much a maple, but yeah, it's generally ash type. So it's a beech ash type of timber, but it will require CNC routing so that machine. It's not all handmade. Certainly no rattan. That's why I have, and I know I've spoken to you before, Megla, late last year, briefly about India. I haven't acted on that, obviously, because I was thinking more of the Indonesian market. And over the Christmas period, I started to look into Vietnam, which is I'm quite interested in pursuing this, and I will be in touch to have a chat to you guys about before the sourcing trip. Unfortunately, I won't make that time because I've got something else on, but I would like to get some assistance to start opening up dialogue with some manufacturers there.
Yeah. So I think this is a good product for Vietnam. If you could send an email to this email address, I just put it in the chat. It's info@indiasourcing.net. And we can talk about the product, and we can try to find suppliers for you, even if you're unable to join the trip. We can definitely source the product for you as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, and this is, yeah, no worries. And this is for anybody, take note of this email address, info@indiasourcing.net. This is not only for India, but for Vietnam as well. I've also put in the link to Airwallex in case anyone's interested. Now, this is at our indiasourcing.net website. It is an affiliate link, but we highly recommend Airwallex, and we've negotiated, a good exchange rate with them. The currency exchange rate is really good, and you also get $20,000 worth of free transfers. So use the link on this webpage to sign up for Airwallex. Okay, if there are any more questions, you can feel free to unmute and ask those questions. If not, I'm going to take some questions from previously registered people. So we've covered logistics. How much capital do you need and product ideas? First, Amazon seller to source from Vietnam. How much capital do you need and product ideas? So this is a question from Chi Chi. I don't know if she's here, probably not. But in terms of capital, one thing to keep in mind is that for some categories, the MOQs might be higher in Vietnam. So if you're just starting out, you might want to keep that in mind. If you don't have a lot of capital to invest, then you might want to, some of the handcrafted products, the MOQs would be lower, but if it's something that is like a backpack or apparel, things like that, the MOQs might be higher. What do you think, Lynn? What are the typical MOQs for your types of products? And they're more handmade, handcrafted.
I double checked this because when I went to Vietnam the last time, I remember I did a presentation and I thought of how to go to 7 figures in a really short time, and I kind of I said I only invested $15,000, but it's actually not true. I got it wrong. So I think I only invested around $7,000 for that first order that I placed. I think Vietnam is very, very flexible. I think it's just finding the right one and having the right dialogue with the people that you are talking to. So of course, if you go and talk to people, everyone is going to give you a specific number. But if you just start up that conversation, and I went to India now recently as well, to the trade show there. And I think if you just start actually having a dialogue with people, I think numbers like MOQs doesn't really matter anymore. So I think that's the trick. I mean, everyone is going to say, yeah, you have to place a container or whatever, but in reality, if you're a good customer, they do want to do business with you. So it's just opening up and just talking to people. And I find them not being so hard.
Yeah, and regardless of the market you're sourcing from, whether it's China, Vietnam, India, when you're there, then that's sending a totally different message to the supplier. It's telling them that, hey, this person is serious, they're here, then they've invested time, money, and effort to travel all the way here. So it is a totally different ball game at that point.
Okay, and Megla, as Marg always says, it's not a weekend business, guys. If you're going to go into doing this, you've got to be a little bit serious. And if you only got a couple of $1,000, for instance, that doesn't go too far. So you got to sort of consider, once you first order, you might need extra capital, to do certain things, for and we all know that Amazon is not a cheap bus ride, is it? It's there is costs, with Amazon that can cost you, to be sitting in Amazon.
And I think something is you've got to consider if you are successful and you've got a product that is maybe $5 or $10 you're paying for it, and you buy $5,000 worth of stock and it's taking off and selling really well, you're not going to have that $5,000 plus your profit back in the bank before you need to do that next order and get that on the water. So I think you need a buffer. So it's no good just thinking, oh yeah, I've got 5,000, that's all I've got in the world to do this business, because you'll probably find that you can spend a lot of money getting to that point with all the things you need to set up and then not have the capital to go forward. I mean, you can get funding for these things, but once again, you need the proof on the board. You can't just go, oh, I've sold 400 of these, now you're going to lend me, a couple of $100,000 to scale this business. So I think, you do need capital. And as I keep saying, it's not a hobby. Hobbies lose money, businesses make money. So guys, if you want a hobby, I don't suggest that you start doing Amazon and importing goods. It's definitely not something you can do. It's just as a hobby.
I would like to add as well, when I mentioned a figure, that actually MOQ was actually very, 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 very low. And if you can work your way through that, and then when you actually become a customer and you actually start working with a factory, the more you can use that factory and do more and more product, MOQs doesn't really matter anymore. You can place, you can just, it's the total, of course, but then you are shipping containers. But I think they are more flexible than what we say that it is actually in reality. I think they're very, very flexible. If you've been there face to face and they've seen you and they will remember you, then I think it's just a different ball game.
And also, guys, one thing is MOV, minimum order value. Like a lot of factories, if it's face to face talking to them, and they do have a lot of different things that they sort of manufacture, you can sort of look at a few different lines, and they might say, well, 6 SKUs or 6 products, maybe they'll say $8,000 investment, but at least you've got 6 different things to try, initially, and not all 6 can fail, if you wouldn't think. So an MOV is also a good way of initially sort of starting as well.
And just something that I'll cover here is shipping costs, because I actually had a call with someone today and they said, oh, we just want to start off with 100 pieces. This was from India, not Vietnam. But my answer was, well, you're going to pay so much in shipping. So you've got to be careful when you start doing the order that a small order might be okay when you're buying it, but then the shipment costs can be very expensive. So you've got to make sure and do your research on how much it's going to cost you, because you might find it's as cheap to ship you know, 1,000, and then, you know, is 100 because of all the extra costs you're going to have, because there's paperwork and all these things that have to be processed. No matter where you're shipping from in the world, there's port charges and all these things. So you can find that, you know, if you're shipping 100 pieces, you know, you could be up for, you know, at least $400 or $500 just to ship those pieces, with all the fees and charges that go with it. So it's just something to bear in mind. Don't go off thinking that that's all you've got to spend. And of course, obviously, then at the other end, there might be some customs duty, very limited, but you will have to pay a customs bond when you go into the US, either a single entry customs bond or a yearly one, which is, you know, a couple of $100 for those things. So there are some added costs that you need to take into account if you are new here and just starting out and don't understand those extra things.
Right. And Lynn, when you and I were talking a couple of days ago, you mentioned profitability. And of course, you know, Amazon is becoming increasingly competitive, and there's so many different, you know, fees and everything. So how do you, you know, remain profitable consistently? Are there any tips that you want to share with people, you know, for profitability, specifically when sourcing in Vietnam?
I think the main trick is to just keep launching. Everyone, like when everyone else is complaining, like, oh, it's becoming so hard, Amazon is so hard, it's so difficult. What happens is that a lot of sellers are actually going to drop out. But during these times, if you just keep launching, that's the trick. You can't just sit on one product and expect that product to go on and on and on for years to come. You gotta keep launching, and I think that's what I've done. I've just used my my factories, and I'm just trying. Like, I also, you know, am sourcing now. I'm starting sourcing from India as well. There is a lot of things I could focus on to do in India, but I'm still trying to just maximize Vietnam to whatever I can, to keep those full shipments going from Vietnam with new SKUs in the containers. Because the more you spread out yourself as well too quickly, and you start sourcing from different countries, then logistics and cash flow is going to have not such a good impact on you. So if you have a factory in Vietnam where you are making a product, if you just stay there and try to do as much as possible with that factory, I think that has been very, very good for me. And when I say factory, it's just another word for saying, like, that is, I have different factories, but that's 4 factories combined, and I just try to use those raw material and just use my head and create as many products I can in those.
And so by using a full container, for anyone who's not, if you do consolidation, you're going to be paying a lot more, so which means you'd be putting your goods into a container with lots of other sellers. So and a container might hold, say, 33 cubic meters or something like that. So if you're only doing a couple of cubic meters, you're paying very high, whereas Linn can fill a container. And I know with the political things that are going on at the moment, things containers have probably gone up again, but at one point I think a 40-foot container got down to about 2,200 from Vietnam, and it was about 1,200 for a 20-foot. Do you know, Linn, have you had any quotes just recently? Because I know things have gone crazy with shipping the last month or so.
I haven't been affected of anything crazy from Vietnam in terms of shipping at all. All that I'm doing is that, I mean, I got different 3PLs in the States in different locations, and I think I mentioned before that even that I hate logistics, it's something that you got to have to be on top of to be profitable as well. So I hate it, but fortunately I have had to become, I spoke to a friend of mine and I said, unfortunately, I have to become a shipping ninja. So I have to become really good at this, even if I like it or not. So right now, what I'm doing is that I'm just cutting out the 3PL. and just shipping straight into Amazon, having those containers to go straight into Amazon. And to do that, you need to have a really good inventory management system type of thing, so you actually can place those orders right. But I think it comes down to things like that. But look, with everything, if there is people that are just going to start off and find a product, it doesn't really matter how you ship. Like I just shipped, LTL, like I just shipped my first few orders. It doesn't matter. It's not about the shipment to start with. It's about finding a product, pricing it right, get it in. Is it going to work or not? If it works, and if you know roughly your margins, then it's not that difficult. I think it's just you can adjust things along the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, I've also just put in the URL for the trip in case anyone wants to save that, and the code is there as well. Now, some people had actually pre-registered for or joined our waiting list before we had launched the trip, and for them, there's a special $750 discount. So you would have received an email from us separately. So if you have pre-registered, there was a Google form that we were running on our website for a couple of months. So if you signed up on that form, if you joined our waiting list, you should have received a separate email for a $750 discount. So look for that email. In case you did register and you didn't receive that email, just send me an email or reach out to me in Messenger and I'll look into that. All right, so Gary is asking, where can we find product catalogs for Vietnamese manufacturers through your company? So generally, I mean, trade shows are the best way to, find, to get catalogs, or you can reach out to suppliers online via their websites, or you could also just email us and tell us what specific products you're looking for. Then we can try and get catalogs from companies directly. Because generally, a lot of these Vietnamese suppliers are also not very good at maintaining their websites. It's similar to Indian suppliers too. You can also go on Alibaba, as Mark mentioned earlier, and use the country location filter to find suppliers in Vietnam. All right, any questions for Lynn? No, feel free to unmute at this point and let us know if you have any questions, any specific products that you're looking for. I'm just going to go through the questions list over here. Annette was asking, I'm looking for glass manufacturers. Are there relevant players in Vietnam, or would you rather recommend India for glass? So yes, Vietnam does have glass manufacturers. India does a lot of the artistic kind of glass. So if you're looking for high quality cut glass, for example, China and Vietnam are better options. But if you're looking for more like hand blown colored glass, more artistic, then India is a better option for that. Did we see a lot of glass supply exhibitors at the trade show, Mark? Do you remember? I don't.
No, there wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
There was only a couple. Yeah, there wasn't a lot. But I mean, bearing in mind that was their first year, so this year it's going to be a lot bigger. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more there, and it might be something that we can add to our factory list to actually go to this time, because we didn't actually do a glass factory last time, so we might put that on our list anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Sean is asking, is it a good option for sourcing products made of plastic? So Sean, yes, we did cover that. I don't think Sean is here, but if you're watching the replay, Sean, yes, plastics is a good option. How to find suppliers? What is the best product that we can source in Vietnam? We've covered that. What are the pitfalls, if any? So there's a question from Phil, and Lynn, I'm going to ask you to cover this. So what are some of the pitfalls that you would recommend or advise people to avoid?
I shared some horror stories before. When it comes to QC, that's been massive for me. So I actually do inspect 100%, because even that there has been a lot of containers over these years, there is always something, and I just keep improving. And as I mentioned, I work with someone really, really closely, so I get better and better and better. Like we get better as a team. 100% QC. What else? I mean, pitfalls in sourcing in Vietnam. I think sourcing in Vietnam has just been absolutely amazing. I only have like good things to say about it. It does. It can take time. Same thing there. I think when you have a relationship with someone, like it's normally around 70-75 days for my suppliers anyway, to have the goods ready for inspection, and then there will be we will do an inspection, and then there will be another week, and then there will be another 1 to 2 weeks to actually get it on a boat. So it does take a little bit of time, but in my experience now, India takes even a little bit longer, even for the first order when they're doing a product that they haven't done before. So I think Vietnam is pretty good. And when you do have a relationship, they actually seem to be able to speed that up as well. So something that should take 75 days, I can pretty much get it down to maybe around 40-45 when you know each other as well, and they know how important it is to keep that specific product in stock.
Yeah. And a lot of these products are, of course, handmade. So, you know, that's why the lead times are longer. But if you are doing something that is, you know, sort of machine made or maybe apparel, then the lead times can be shorter as well.
Yeah, but 75 days is not even a long lead time anymore. I mean, it takes time to produce. I think it's more the time leading up to that when you're working on a sample.
Right.
You know, that can take time. Like they can be a bit slow, but it's really much up to you as well to take control over the situation and manage it. And as you said, you offer the service to do everything for you. I mean, it depends how much time you have on your hands.
Exactly.
And I think repeat orders are always a lot quicker. I mean, that initial order, you've got a lot of mucking around just getting your product right, and then you've got to design your packaging, and it's, you know, there are lots of things to organize in your first run. Once you're doing repeat orders, it's a lot easier because everything should be set in stone, so you can just say, right, redo that order again, and I find then you get it much quicker on your second time. The first order is always going to take you a lot longer, and I mean, particularly if you're doing it on your own and you want to get the golden samples, and you might get samples sent back and forwards from your country. You know, and it takes so long. All those things are weeks and weeks, and that's why, in a way, I think getting a sourcing agent to do the work for you in wherever you are initially saves you so much time, or getting on that plane and going over there and working with the supplier face to face. In a week, you could do that whole process. It could take you 3 months. So, you know, like I've been to our factory and said, oh, can you make me this? And within half an hour, they've run down to the room and brought me back a, you know, pretty rough prototype, and then give us 24 hours and we'll do the next one. And I think those things make so much difference to trying to do it by, you know, message and wait for them. And, you know, it's wrong. And it's very hard to communicate on Zoom exactly what you want, whereas if you can get some things out of their factory and show and put things together, it does make it a lot easier. I think you probably find that too, Linn, that it's easier when you're over there than when you're trying to deal with them over the internet.
It changes everything. It just goes so much faster. Even when I went to Vietnam with you guys the last time, I already had my manufacturers, but we were traveling and we were visiting all the factories together. I needed bits and pieces that I actually easily found from those other factories. I could get their business card, I could take it, I could give it to my manufacturer and say, hey, I want you to order this from here. And it just goes so much quicker because they are a little bit slow. It was good to be there and just traveling around the country and just get things to happen much faster.
Right. Andrew says the first pancake is always lumpy, as they say. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. But also, if there is new people, and when we talk about timing, I have to say that I had never been on Amazon. I had never been on Amazon when I started. I did not know, and it took me 6 months from doing that first product and getting it, finding a supplier and getting the first sale was literally 6 months. So that is not too long, right? If we talk about long lead times and stuff, that's pretty quick to get that to happen. So it's possible.
So Gary's saying, if I'm designing t-shirts, can I use my own design and will a Vietnamese supplier create that design on a fabric? Absolutely. That's what they specialize in. And they will do that. The MOQ might be slightly higher, Gary. So we'll have to, talk about that. Where's the best place to find sourcing agents for Vietnamese products? A simple Google search. Well, we are here. We have a team in Vietnam. We can help you source products. So if you want to just shoot an email to info@indiasourcing.net. Of course, we specialize in India, but we also source in Vietnam. We have a team there now. So info@indiasourcing.net if you want to shoot over an email with the details of your product, specifically the MOQs that you're looking for, or the order quantities that you're looking for, that will be very helpful. John, I see you've raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, Meg, hi.
Hi.
What about the fitness products? Not necessarily weights, but things like small exercise devices that have parts to them, mostly made out of plastic, some metal, things in that
Yes.
realm.
Yeah. There may be factories for those. Depending on the product category, yes, there may be factories. So that's something that we can, do. Yeah. If you could send us an email, then I can, ask the team to look into it. It really depends on the product category.
Okay. And they would also handle my my package designs. I would give them the
Yes.
finished files because I'm a graphic designer, but that they would take the printing also and the packaging with the product manufacturing as one.
Yes, definitely. They would
Okay.
do the packaging as well. And yeah, if you have a design, if you have a die line of the packaging, then they can work on that. And usually if the packaging is simple, then the manufacturer can handle it. But if it's something more complicated, then you could also work with a separate packaging company to, create the packaging and then send it over to the manufacturer of the product.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing, Meglet, like we keep on saying, tech packs. If anybody's, got certain sort of designs that they want, and they use a tech pack. For instance, if it's a backpack, you can't just say, "Hey, I want a backpack with 2 straps and 2 little sleeves at the end, and this is the color I want." If you have a tech pack, you can actually, have a illustrated diagram of the actual product, the certain stitching, the length of the straps, whatever. But that would all be in the tech pack. And once you hand the tech pack over to the manufacturer, it's far easier for them to follow your design needs. So that's something to consider. It might cost you to get a tech pack from if you can't sort of produce one yourself, but it certainly saves a heck of a lot of time. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
Well, yeah, and otherwise, you're just saying, I want this, and do they know how thick you want the material, how long, what type of zips do you want, what type of buckle do you want silver, do you want gold? There's so much, like it could be a backpack, it could be a suitcase, it could be a garment. It's very important. And once again, if you don't have all that specified, the factory's just going to do whatever they think, you're not going to get product you like. And then when you go to QC it, if you've got a tech pack, you simply give the QC firm your tech pack and say, this is my specifications. Does my product meet all these things? So I think it's something that you've got to do if you're doing anything in the garment or, bags, any of those types of things. You definitely need a tech pack.
Right. So we've got a couple more minutes before we sign off over here. If there are any more questions, please let us know in the chat, or you can also just unmute and ask your questions. I'm going to take a couple more questions from what we've gotten previously, if there are no questions from anybody. Okay, Andrew.
And there's somebody there asked about paper products and gift bags. Yeah, definitely. There are lots of suppliers for getting, gift type bags and carry bags and all that in Vietnam. Easily done.
Yeah. Got one good question, Meg. Can I ask this? I think this is important. What about NDAs, non-disclosure agreements? How do a lot of people handle that have unique products that could be profitable for somebody else if they copy it? what is your
Andrew has
opinions
the
on
same
that?
question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Andrew asked the same
Thank
question.
you.
So, and Andrew's product is being patented. So what we found is in India and both India and Vietnam, generally suppliers are very open to signing NNNs, not only NDAs, but NNNs. And there's not an issue. And in fact, when we are sourcing products for clients, then we sign a three-way NNN agreement. So it's the manufacturer, it's us, and then the client as well. And so it's not an issue. The advantage of India and Vietnam is that a lot of these manufacturers are not selling directly on Amazon. The reason why there's so much IP issues in China is because a lot of the manufacturers are selling directly on Amazon. So when they see a cool product, you know, they're like, oh, this is a great product. Let me put it on my own listing, because they know that there's, you know, more profitability by selling it directly. But in Vietnam and India, what we find is that most manufacturers, they want to focus on B2B selling. They don't want to do B2C and sell piece by piece. They want to do more high volume orders. So there's less incentive for them to, you know, just copy your designs. But of course, it's best to be, you know, to protect your designs. And so sign an NNN, it's not an issue. At least that, you know, sort of deters them from displaying your product at a trade show, or maybe, you know, showing your product to other buyers as well. Yeah. What you could also do is, while you're getting quotes, instead of sending your actual product, maybe you can send a very similar product, you know, for the quote, and not the exact same product. You know, yeah, NNN is non-disclose, no, triple N, three N's, non-compete, non-disclosure, and non-circumvent. Those are the three N's.
But it's definitely not as big problem as in China. It's totally different in Vietnam, like totally different. So that's something really good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so it is a big problem in China then, with a really cool product that would be great for them to take. It is a problem, because that scares me.
Look, they copied our very first products out of China. We did it was a bundle of it was baking set with all different things in it, and I did it all colours and designed the box and displayed it. And as supposed to, oh, that is a great idea. Nobody's doing that. I was live for 3 weeks, and so were they, with a different colour in virtually my box, etc. And then I moved to India, and I've never gone back to China, and I would not. And my supplier I've been using now since 2017, same products, never been copied. In fact, nobody sells the exact product I sell on Amazon now. Because they have to go to my manufacturer's factory to find the products, because even at the trade show, I don't see my product on display, because they only show a minimal amount. So, yeah, I think you're a lot safer getting out of China. And I mean, I could tell you so many stories from people we know in the Amazon space that have been copied, and they've even had, you know, patents in process and all sorts of things. I can tell you some scary stories. So, yeah, it's very prevalent in China.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
That's why there's so many Chinese sellers on Amazon. I think, what is it now? Isn't it 90-something% of sellers on Amazon are Chinese? And that's where they're getting all the products from.
Wow.
It's not
Is
90
it that high?
yet, is it?
I can't believe it.
No, it's not.
Very,
It's, like
it's fairly
60,
high,
70.
yes.
Really?
I thought I read
90?
somewhere the other day that it's getting higher. They've gone really high.
I heard this. Could this be true, that different people from China walk into the different factories and they spy, basically? They observe. Has anybody ever heard of that? Where sort of like an agent would come into another factory to see what they were working on and kind of get around the block, sort of, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I lived in China and worked in China for 10 years, and, you know, I've visited hundreds of factories there. So I wouldn't say that they, you know, I mean, yeah, spy is probably not the right word, but yeah, there are lots of like backdoor entries, you know, to factories. It may be an employee in the factory that is maybe partnering with somebody else, and they sort of sneak a design out, or, you know, maybe it's somebody who's working in the factory temporarily, and maybe they decide that they want to do something of their own, and when they leave, they take, you know, some of the designs with them. So there are lots of different things that can, you know, happen that go on. So
Mhm.
And I think Alibaba too. I mean, you go on there, and I mean, if you're looking at a product and you see something, you and the rest of the world are also looking at that same product, because they're just, everything is sitting on Alibaba that China makes. So I think, you know, it's hard to keep something that's not, that you find that nobody else will be selling. Eventually, it'll, you know, it'll just get picked up because it's there for everyone to see.
Mhm. You just
Yeah.
got to get out there in the beginning and become the leader of that product and the name of that product, basically, and create your own brand out of it
yeah.
while you
And as
can,
Lynn
right?
said, you know, keep launching new products, you know, stay ahead of
Mm.
everybody
Mhm.
else. I think that's the best way to do that as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Great,
would
thank
say
you.
if you have a really good product, don't sit there and wait. Just get on with it. Don't worry too much.
Exactly.
Just don't let that
That's
hold you
true.
back. Just
That's
go
true.
out, and if you have a good product, like, don't worry about it. You're so ahead of everyone else.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, just you know,
Go with it. Yes, go with it.
yeah, go
Just
with
go
it.
with it.
Yes,
And,
thank you.
the
Thank you
other
very
thing,
much.
think, John, the thing, like when you go to travel to a show or go to a factory, you quite often see in their showroom, you know, you'll like, I don't know, half a dozen sort of products, but you also see another half a dozen products that complement those half a dozen products. And sometimes you know, you've got an X, and that's what Lynn does, I'm sure. You know, you sort of soon find those, you know, other product lines or niches that complement what you're already selling. And you go,
Mhm.
and I'm sure these ladies go, ding, the light comes on, and, you know, there's another product. And I know it happens with Mark. You know, if I
Yeah.
put this, and, you know, or if they buy that, maybe they want this because that'll look good on the mantelpiece, you know, alongside that, because of the you know, what material it's made of. So yeah, you know,
The companion pieces, right?
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I
like I
think
have a
going to
line
a
of products.
trade show. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be looking more into India then for this exercise device type things that I have, and I have so I have 4 different lines in that product line. So and it's unique. It's really not. It's not been seen yet as far as you know, the bands that you pull, the plastic rubber things. It's completely different than that, and it does give you
Mhm.
resistance. So it is a unique way of doing it, but we'll see. You know, like Lynn says, you got to go with it. You got to create your brand and get out there and just take
Yeah.
it forward. Great advice. Thank you.
That's all right.
Perfect. Awesome. So just one last time before we sign off, I want to share this screen. So it's the code is launch for $500 off, and you can go to vietnamsourcingtrip.com and you can sign up for the trip. We look forward to seeing you in Vietnam. We look forward to helping you source products in Vietnam. And I'm absolutely sure you will love the whole experience. It's life-changing, and it's just a once in a lifetime experience. So if you are interested in these categories, if you want to explore Vietnam, I would encourage you to join us on the trip. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to any of us or send us an email at info@indiasourcing.net. We can address any questions. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us, and the replay will be sent out later today. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Thanks, Lynn.
Bye.
See you soon, Lynn.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.